The NHL is going to go to a 32-team league. And we're always having the debate about make it fair, make the playoffs fair. And there's two sides of the debate. There's the go back to the 1 versus 8. There's a lot of Leafs fans that say, well, it wasn't fair the Leafs got to play the Bruins. But if you went with 4 versus 5, Toronto would have played Pittsburgh in the first round. But then there's, of course, the argument of, well, you don't have a balanced schedule. Meaning a team in one conference or one division may have an easier time than a team in another one. So if we do it this way, I made divisions of 4. Yes, those are the Whalers. Why? Because I don't have a Seattle pin to put in there, and I thought, what, I'll just pretend the Whalers are coming back, because this is not for the 32-team league with Seattle in it. Seattle obviously would go into this division somewhere, Vegas would move somewhere else, and you have a whole other picture altogether. But if you go with 4-team divisions, okay, and that's kind of a crazy one too. You could have the division winners qualify. So I've put them up here, and you seed them 1 through 8. So the team with the best division record is your number 1 seed, and the team with the worst division leader record is number 8, and they would meet team number 1 in the second round. That sounds relatively fair. And then how you decide the other 8 spots is kind of tricky. You don't want it to just be second place in every division, because again, some divisions are going to be stronger than others, right? So you'd want some kind of a 2 versus 3 system, or maybe a cross system. What the historical videos have been doing, the NHL used to have a system where you'd have the division winners against each other, deciding who was going to go to the final. So the division winners would decide who was going to get a bye into the finals, while teams that finished second and third in the division crossed over and played against each other. So if you had one division that was strong and the other one wasn't, 2 and 3 of that division would wipe out the others. Then they'd play against each other for a chance to go to a Stanley Cup and go against the division winners, or the winner of the series of division winners. And it's a series that the idea of bye rounds, there were byes as late as the 70s. And as I go through the series, we'll get into bye weeks and I keep wanting to say bye weeks, NFL's in my brain. Byes into the next round. So you don't play as much as everybody else. And it would be some kind of an incentive / reward for teams that finished right up there. So you could have a system where you have 8 teams automatically qualify for the playoffs, and then the other 8 spots are kind of up for grabs, where you'd have, say, 16 teams playing off for that chance in a best-of-3 series, where the teams with the better record have all the home games. And I mean all of them, not just 2, all of them. They get them all. And then the winners of those 8 series plug into those 8 spots according to their record. If you want to go by divisional stuff not mattering anymore and just get rid of it. It's as close to a 1 versus 16 as I think the NHL could get. Yes, you could end up with a position where you'd have, let's say the Rangers finish first in this division, and the winner of the wild card is Vancouver. You could have the Rangers and Vancouver against each other in the second round. And then they could knock out Vancouver in the first round and get LA in the second round. So you could have a situation where, yes, a team that's got a really good seed could end up with a really crappy matchup. And that's part of the reason why they don't do 1 versus 16. So another idea I have was 4 divisions or 4 conferences of 8. And it gets kind of dicey here. 4 divisions of 8, no conferences. So conferences are gone. You have your 4 divisions and that's it. There's no West, no East. You just have 4 divisions. That's why there's blue lines here. So each 4-team section is meant to be a 4-team division, and then the 8, that's an 8-team conference. Under this schedule, you could play each team in your division 5 times, and every other team in the league twice. The schedule goes to 83 games that way. That doesn't really work, does it? An odd number of games means you're going to play 1 more game on the road or 1 more game at home. So that doesn't exactly work. Or You could find a way to do the math so that it works a little bit better. You could pull a game off so that it's 34 and 48 and say, well, you're going to play 5 games against every team in your division except the Islanders. You're going to play them 4 times. And you're going to play everybody in the division except Detroit. You're going to play them 4 times. The NHL could figure something out there. So the scheduling kind of works. Or 2 conferences, no divisions. So you just have 2 blocks of 16 and there's no division at all. You could play 4 games against all 15 teams in your conference and 2 against the other conference, and you come up with 92 games. That's a non-starter. You can add 10 games to the schedule. We wouldn't be crowning a Stanley Cup champion until mid-July. The players aren't going to sign on. The owners aren't going to like it either. And, yeah, nobody's going to sign on with that. So the other option would be to do 4 games against teams in your own conference and go back to 1 against teams in the other conference. So you would see teams from the other conference once every other year in your barn. And that upset fans a lot when the NHL did that. The NHL's done this before, where you only see teams in the other conference once. Now, I've been a proponent before of just do it like baseball did for years, where you just play teams in your own conference. Look at the NFL. The NFL's got a 16-game schedule, which means you can't have teams play against everybody. So sometimes there's teams that haven't seen each other in a while, and they'll meet up, and it's kind of something special when you see them against each other. If the NHL went 4 times 15 against your own conference and 1 versus all 16 of the other conference, you come up with 76 games. Then the NHL could look at the conferences and say, all right, we're going to have 2 against 6 of those teams that we can consider rivals. So for Canadian teams, it would be other Canadian teams, and maybe you throw in an original 6 for one team. Like, you could do a schedule. It could work. But again, fans would be kind of upset because there'd be teams that wouldn't be coming into their town. But with NHL expansion, I think that's eventually going to happen. It's either that or you just wipe out divisional matchups altogether. Which, for teams on the West Coast, even though there's more teams out west now than there was, it still makes their schedule kind of brutal. I did the video on the scheduling yesterday and talked about a lot of long road trips. And I looked at some of the Eastern teams and I thought, this is a 6 or 7 game road trip, but they don't leave their own time zone, and they're not having to get on a plane necessarily to do this. They can just get on a train or a bus and travel for an hour, and they're at their next location. So it's not the end of the world doing it that way. But it looks bad to have it's an 8-game road trip, and in reality it's a road trip. It's not flying all over the continent, whereas for Vancouver it can be. And the point I'm trying to make is simple here. Yes, you could go back to 1 versus 8 for each conference, but we're going to have this argument again. We're going to have teams that are 4 and 5 playing against each other that we say this isn't right, that one of them's going to be out. We're going to have a division winner that gets a top seed, because division winners do that, who have less points than a team that's a 3rd seed or a 4th seed. And we're going to be saying, well, this isn't right. They shouldn't be that number 2 seed. Yes, they won their division, but they should be a lower seed. Whereas the division winner is going to say, well, wait a minute, our record may not be as good as theirs, but we played a tougher schedule. And then it turns into a mess. So a more complicated system might be in order, and maybe with 32 teams, maybe they'll completely revamp the whole thing. I get asked a lot, well, if Seattle comes in, what happens? If Seattle, let's just say Seattle goes with the Whalers, I would think the obvious choice to move out of the Pacific would be Arizona, and Seattle would take their place. But if you had a division of Seattle, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim, that's kind of a fantastic division. It kind of leaves Vancouver out on its own. Vancouver, which is only a 4-hour drive from Seattle, and you're potentially making a mess out of that, because then Vancouver would be with Calgary, Edmonton, and Vegas. You could argue that maybe Colorado goes in where Vegas is, but again, I think that's why you stay with the 8-team divisions. But for me personally, I could see Vegas or Arizona being the team that moves. And the one other thing I wonder, and I'm just throwing this out there, when I look at a map, Nashville is south, but it's also east, and I'm kind of surprised that Nashville's never been talked about as maybe potentially being in the Eastern Conference, because they're closer to a lot of those Eastern East Coast teams than they are to the West. So Nashville's road trips kind of suck for them too, because they're longer plane trips, and you're crossing time zones. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Because again, I'm trying to think outside the box, because the obvious answer is to go back to 1 versus 8. But I'd like to see them come up with something brand new. I would like to see a system, and it was talked about. It was talked about when the last round of expansion was being done and they were going up to 30 teams. I remember Glenn Sather saying it's a shame that only 16 teams get to play in playoffs. And if we expanded and we add 4 wild cards to it, and there were 20 teams with a chance to play down to 16 to actually start the official playoffs, it would be more fun. More fan bases have games that are important later in the season, which is important to the NHL. So I wouldn't rule out my idea that only 8 teams miss out on a chance to get into the postseason. And then maybe you see 16 playing off to get down to those 8 spots against division winners. It's just a fun idea. Just a fun idea I had. I just thought I'd share it with you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And as I said, I just got creative with this. Let me know your creative ideas for how to change the format. And I'm not just saying like 1 versus 8, like completely change the format. Something crazy that you wish that you could do in an NHL 18 game so you could go, look what I did. That kind of thing. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.